He didn't know her name. He didn't know where she came from. But the moment she collapsed in the back seat of his taxi, gasping for air and whispering, "Please, don't let me die," he realized something terrifying. He was the only person who could save her, and he had only $14 left to his name. His name was Samir Hassan, 52 years old, a taxi driver in the city for nearly 3 decades. Every wrinkle on his face carried a story. Every scratch on his old yellow taxi held a memory. He wasn't rich. He wasn't lucky. He wasn't one of the people the world stopped for. He was one of the people the world rushed past. Samir lived alone in a small studio apartment, still haunted by the loss of his wife 3 years earlier, a loss that drained him emotionally and financially. Since her passing, everything went downhill. Bills piled up, rent increased, the taxi company took bigger percentages, and Samir was left with pennies after every shift that night, the night everything changed. Samir was down to his final $14, just enough for gas, just enough to finish his shift, just enough to hope tomorrow would be better. It was 11:45 p.m., cold, foggy, the kind of night where people walked fast, stayed quiet, and avoided trouble. Samir was about to end his shift when a young woman stumbled to the edge of the street, waving desperately for a taxi. He rolled down the window. "Need a ride?" She nodded, clutching her stomach. Her face was pale. Her hands trembled. She was sweating despite the cold. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. She climbed into the back seat and whispered, "Hospital, please." Samir didn't wait for more. He hit the gas and sped through the misty streets. Halfway there, she collapsed forward, clutching her chest. "Please, don't let me die," she gasped. Samir's heart slammed inside his chest. He reached for his phone, but the battery flashed red and died instantly. No GPS, no emergency call, nothing. He pressed harder on the gas. Her breathing grew shallow. Her lips turned blue. She was going into shock. Samir pulled up to the emergency entrance, jumped out, ran to the nurses and shouted, "Help! She's dying!" They rushed outside with a gurney, lifted her out, and raced her inside. Samir, breathless, shaken, followed them inside, only to be stopped by the receptionist. "Sir, does she have insurance?" Samir blinked. I don't know. Her treatment requires a deposit. It's policy." Samir stared at the woman behind the desk. He looked at the doors where the girl disappeared. He looked down at the $14 in his pocket. "That's all I have," he whispered. "I can't pay more." The receptionist shook her head. "We can't begin full treatment without a deposit." He felt his heart pound. This girl, this stranger, might die because of money. Samir swallowed hard, pulled out every dollar he had, and placed it on the counter. "Take it. Do whatever you can. Just don't let her die." The receptionist hesitated, but the desperation in Samir's eyes pushed her to act. She signaled a nurse. "Start emergency protocol, now." Doctors rushed into the trauma room. Samir stayed in the waiting area, hands trembling, breathing uneven. He didn't even know her name, but something inside him refused to walk away. Hours passed. Midnight turned into morning. Patients came and went. Finally, a doctor stepped out. "Are you the taxi driver who brought her in?" Samir stood up instantly. Yes. Is she okay?" The doctor smiled softly. "You saved her life. Another 10 minutes. And she wouldn't have made it." Samir exhaled shakily. His knees almost buckled. "What happened to her?" "Severe allergic reaction," the doctor explained. "Her airway was closing. She needed immediate epinephrine and oxygen. Your quick action kept her alive." Samir nodded, tears gathering in his eyes. "Can I see her?" "Of course." He entered the room slowly. The girl lay on the bed, breathing normally again, her complexion returning to color. When she opened her eyes and saw him, she whispered, You saved me." Samir smiled weakly. "No, you just needed someone to get you here in time." A tear rolled down her cheek. "I didn't have money. They would have refused me." Samir said nothing. He didn't want her to know he had given his last dollar. "My name is Emily," she said. I don't know how to thank you." Samir nodded. "Just get better." He turned to leave. Wait, Emily said softly. There's something you should know. She reached into her purse, the purse she had dropped during the panic, and took out a badge, a hospital badge. Dr. Emily Carter, cardiology resident. Samir blinked. You? You're a doctor? I am, she said with a small smile. But tonight, I was just a patient. She swallowed hard. And you were my hero. When Samir left the hospital, the sun was rising. Bright, golden, warm. A new day, a hopeful one. His taxi sat quietly in the parking lot, empty tank. No money, no fuel to drive home. He sighed and sat behind the wheel, feeling exhaustion crash over him. 5 minutes later, someone knocked on the window. Emily, still in a hospital gown, wrapped in a blanket. She held an envelope in her hand. This is for you, she said. Samir shook his head. I didn't help you for money. I know, she said. That's why you deserve it even more. She placed the envelope on the dashboard and walked away. Samir opened it slowly. Inside was a note and a check. The note read, You spent your last dollar to save me. I'm giving you a chance to save yourself. Emily. The check was for $50,000. Samir gasped, covering his mouth. His eyes filled with tears. At the bottom of the note, she added, Come to the hospital tomorrow. I want to help you the way you helped me. He did go the next day. Emily introduced him to her hospital foundation director. They heard his story, his struggle, his kindness, his sacrifice. 3 weeks later, Samir had a new job, hospital transport driver, full benefits, steady pay, a fresh start. And every morning he drove by the spot where Emily first waved for his taxi. The moment that changed both their lives, he spent his last dollar trying to save a stranger. But in the end, saving her ended up saving him too.